Hi, thanks for tuning in. If you haven't read Genesis chapter 3 yet, please pause this video now and then come back so that you can be acutely aware of what we're going to cover today. Thanks a lot. Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to be looking at the consequences of the sin of Adam and Eve. You know, everything changed when they sinned and their eyes were open. It's at that point that they knew that they were naked, and in their shame, they did their best to cover themselves up. It must have been a moment that literally, when they became acutely aware of what they've done and the consequences of what they did, how shocking that must have been for them, how it just life-changing, altering their entire existence. I mean, we've all kind of felt that way before, right after being pulled over for speeding, right after forgetting a really important date, right after doing a project too quickly and then breaking something and having to start all over. It's a sinking feeling. And once you have that feeling, you're angry at yourself, you're embarrassed, you have shame, you have sadness, you have all kinds of different emotions going through you. And so let's go on ahead and look at Genesis chapter 3 and exactly what brought up this shame moment for Adam and Eve. So starting in Genesis 3, verse 7, then their eyes of both of them were opened. This is after they ate of the fruit. And they realized they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. But the Lord called to them, starting in verse 9, where are you? And he answered, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. So they know that they're naked. And then starting in verse 21 through the end, then the Lord God made garments of skin for Adam and his wife and clothed them. And the Lord God said, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever. So the Lord God banished them from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he had been taken. So Adam and Eve feel this tremendous amount of shame because for the first time humanity knew good from evil. Now they didn't know this because they sinned, all right? They touched the fruit before they ate it, which was definitely a sin. Yet they didn't feel guilty because while they knew the difference between obedience and disobedience, they knew the difference between right and wrong, they didn't yet know good from evil. It's kind of like a 3-year-old who runs in a store or a 4-year-old who steals candy. They know better, but they don't know why. It's the actual consumption of the fruit itself that gave them this knowledge. And what did they do once they had the knowledge? They immediately covered up their nakedness. They immediately covered their shame. They immediately covered their sin. Now, God did several things as a consequence to Adam and Eve's consumption of this fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but I'd like to focus on just 2 of them. First, God made garments of skin for Adam and Eve. Humanity's solution of simply covering things up was not enough for God to be satisfied. Instead, something had to die in order for Adam and Eve's sin and shame to be covered. Blood had to be shed. This may have been the first time in creation that an animal had died. We don't know. We don't know for sure, but we do know that because of their actions, being covered by something that was not guilty was the only way to make it right. Because of this animal that was sacrificed to clothe them, God saw Adam and Eve wrapped in the innocence of this animal who died instead of seeing their sin and their shame. Second, God separated mankind from the garden. Before they sinned, Adam and Eve had unity with their Creator, but after they sinned, it's a completely different story. After they knew the difference between good and evil, after they knew guilt and shame, after they broke the bond between God and humanity, it was then that they were no longer closely united in relationship with Yahweh. Look at Genesis 3, verses 8 and 9. Then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord among the trees of the garden. But the Lord called to the man, "Where are you?" Have you ever really thought about that? God was physically walking in the garden and audibly speaking to Adam and Eve, but now Adam and Eve and you and I would have to live separated from God. With the knowledge of good and evil came a consequence that was warned of from the start. The Lord God commanded the man, saying, "From any tree of the garden you may freely eat, but from the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day you eat from it, you will surely die." The serpent was crafty. He spoke in half-truths with manipulative intentions. He said that man and woman could be like God, knowing the difference between good and evil, knowing good and evil. And that was the enticing part of the invitation. They could be like God. It's the same invitation that Satan used when the Messiah was in the wilderness for 40 days, to be like God. Even though the Christ was, in fact, God, he had taken on the form of a human being, and he refused to use his divinity to his own advantage. But Satan tempted him to be like God. God can tell stones to become bread. Why don't you? God can command angels to guard him. Why don't you? God gave me, Satan, this world, and I can give it back to the Christ. Why don't you? Where Adam and Eve failed is where the Christ did not fail. Adam and Eve took the bait, but the Messiah did not. Have you noticed that once Satan finds a gimmick that works, he'll use it over and over and over again? When God created mankind in his image, the purpose in doing so was to have a representation of himself on earth. Now, note the word that I used was a representation, not a representative. When Americans look at a coin or currency and they see the image of a former president, that image is there as a representation. It's there to make people think of Washington or Jefferson or Jackson, Lincoln, Grant, but it does not act as a representative of those presidents. It's the same thing with humankind. God made us in his image so that we would think of him. But how do we look like him? Is it physical? Is it in power? Is it in intelligence? We look like God in several ways. We have dominion over the earth, like God has dominion over all of existence. We are eternal from the point of our creation onward, the same way God is eternal from everlasting to everlasting. We appreciate and we engage in things like ceremony and love and community and worship, as God has ordained those things to be directed towards himself. Yet we must remember that even though we are still in the image of God, we are simply the imperfect type of him who was to come. About 2,000 years ago, God himself came to earth in the image of a man and showed us the representation of the punishment that we deserve. Being in the image of God does not mean we are like God or that we can become God, in spite of what the Egyptian pharaohs thought, or the Asian and Roman emperors, or the Natchez rulers, or various kings through history have thought and claimed. None of them were ever gods. Even some popular current day groups have fallen into Satan's snare like Adam and Eve did, and they claim that they can evolve into being gods in the future, or that they are gods right now, little gods. The beliefs of some of these groups, and even various branches of occultism or mysticism, New Ageism, even some Eastern religious systems can even be found within folks who claim to be Christian, like Mormonism and uh, some Word of Faith leaders who teach that they are little gods. That doctrine, quite honestly, is heresy. The Lord never said that we would become God or a God or little gods. It's just not there in Scripture. However, like all good lies, there is just a hint of truth included in some way. This lie from Satan had two small truths. Number one, like God, humanity now knows the difference between good and evil. And number two, eating from the tree of knowledge of good and evil did not result in a physical death on the day that they ate it, but it absolutely resulted in their spiritual execution. Humanity is no longer worthy of being in the presence of God forever. They're just not. They've been cut off and they've been separated from their Creator. They are dead to God. And yet there's hope. There's hope. For God to be satisfied with Adam and Eve, an innocent animal was killed, and they were clothed with that animal's skin. And for God to be satisfied with mankind, He again sent someone without guilt in order to die for humanity's sin and shame and for us to be covered. The Lord of all sent someone who was above reproach to shed His blood to make it all right. As a result, the unity of the Creator and the created has been restored. And of course, there's only one sacrifice that's great enough to cover the guilt of all humanity. There's only one who's blameless enough to remove all of our sin. Because of this sacrifice, God sees us clothed and wrapped in the innocence of the one who died. And there's only one who died who is worthy of doing all of that. It was God Himself. That's Jesus. That's Jesus. Thanks for tuning in to today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so that you'll know the next time a video comes out. I'd love it if you left a comment. Have a great day.